welcome to the July 2026 Mound Tech Talk. Tonight we've got Carl Bishop. He's spoken to us before, and we're fortunate to have him back again. And he comes to us with, he started his career teaching, spent 26 years in analytical chemistry and supervision here at Mound. And during that time, he was involved significantly with the bicycling that was done here at Mound. So he's going to talk about that tonight. And then when he left Mound, he went to Fernald, continued the bicycling, talked about alternate energy sources. So he's a very versatile man. And
Man, what'd you say?
I'm going to turn it over to Carl to tell us about the adventures in bicycling.
Thank you. Okay, I worked at Mound for 26 years. I left Mound, I was gone probably about 23 years. So a number of you don't know. I know this guy here, Bob Ellison. I practiced with him quite a bit. Tom Kissner is here. Boy, I sure didn't recognize him when he came in. Well, I know him now. The main person here is Ray Sauter. There he is. Okay, when I was working at Mound, this guy, Ray Sauter, came up to me and said, "You should give a presentation on your work." Well, my work was analytical chemistry. I like my work here at Mound, but I don't think anybody would be interested in that. So I finally decided to pick the topic: nuclear electricity, nuclear batteries, and nuclear homicide. And I think the audience enjoyed that. That was my first presentation. But after that presentation, I got interested in that. Gave many presentations, probably gave about 20 of them. And I mentioned I gave one on Doris Day. I asked Bob Bowman and who was it? Well, someone else. I said I could give a presentation on Doris Day. I was halfway kidding, of course. That's not very technical at all. Now this presentation isn't technical, but it sort of relates to Mound. I started bicycling at Mound in 1975. I never stopped until I bicycled for 42 years at Mound, at Fernald, and then I started teaching at Miami Hamilton. I bicycled there for 17 years. So I like bicycling. And my title, I think, 7 years of bicycling adventures. I had a lot of adventures. I really liked bicycling. That was part of my life. Without bicycling, I wouldn't have enjoyed my life that much. I might mention bicycled until I was 82 years old. And at that point, I came down with neuropathy, and you know, my balance isn't that good. So I had to stop bicycling. I have a stationary bicycle, but that's not real exciting. It gets boring, but it's good exercise. So I still do that, but I can't bicycle anywhere in the environment. Well, let me get on to the presentation. I think, okay, I already mentioned Ray Sauter. I want to thank him. There's some other people I should have to thank. Well, Kathy's in the front row. This is my daughter, Kathy. She's brought me up here and she's helped me out with the presentation. I have another daughter, Joni, who has helped me prepare these presentations in PowerPoint. And I have a son, David. He's not involved in these presentations, but I took many bike rides with him, very enjoyable bike rides. I do have a wife, Mary. She's not here tonight, but I took many bicycle rides with her too. So I've had quite a career on bicycling. Well, let me go on with the presentation. As far as questions, I think pertinent questions right away, ask. But I should keep most of your questions till the end of the presentation. Okay, I lived in Kentucky. I came from Kentucky. I lived in an old town called Lookout Heights. It's now called Fort Wright. I don't know if you all know the towns in northern Kentucky. But my first adventure as a kid, 12 years old, I bicycled to the Greater Cincinnati Airport. And as you probably know, the Greater Cincinnati Airport is in Kentucky. So it was convenient for me to take that ride. You notice in the middle of that route is a town called Villa Hills. Now, it wasn't there when I bicycled to Greater Cincinnati, but the hills were there. And I only had a single-speed bike. I didn't have a 10-speed or anything like that. So I can't remember. That was a long time ago. I was only 12 years old. But I imagine sometimes I'd have to get off the bike and walk up. But there's what the Greater Cincinnati Airport looked in 1948-49. That was just the start. The airport was established in the 40s. I don't know, but you can see there's not much to it then. And has everybody here been to the Cincinnati Airport? I don't know. I know there's a Dayton Airport around here. But that was the original Cincinnati Airport. And originally, Delta and American Airlines flew out of Cincinnati. Okay, the second thing I did with a bicycle, I don't know if I call this adventure, but it was in a sense. I played tennis. I was 16 and 17. I didn't have a car, so I just bicycled to the tennis courts. It was only maybe 3 miles. It wasn't a real big ride. So I rode to the bicycle. I rode to the tennis courts. Maybe this is a good time to mention that a couple of times after work at Mound, this was only a couple of times, at the bottom of the hill, Mound Road, I'd bicycle up past SMPP. That was quite a hill, as most of you know. I'd bicycle up the hill and go over to the tennis barn. And is Paul Lamberger here? Well, Tom Kistner's here. There were a number of us who played tennis at the tennis barn. And I don't know, I did that for a couple of years. Then I left Mound shortly after that. Do you know if the tennis lasted very long, Tom? When did they quit the tennis? Or did they ever?
It's actually moved over to, it's called Regency now, South Regency. That's now ice hockey, where we played.
Oh,
It's
okay.
ice hockey.
I left Mound in '93, but I think I played tennis up to that time. Anyway, like I say, a couple of times after work, I'd bicycle over to the tennis barn. And I know you played at the tennis barn sometimes. It was maybe 9 or 10 miles away. And I'd like to mention, to get there, I have to bicycle over Austin Boulevard. Now, Austin Boulevard was not that way when I bicycled over that way. Since I left, of course, Austin Boulevard is really built up. You all know that. And I know it too, because I drive up to Dayton every once in a month. But at that time, I did bicycle over Austin Boulevard to the tennis barn. Okay. At age 18, I got a summer job. I was just a student. I worked at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. I might mention I worked on the thorium project. At that time, thorium was considered as a possible nuclear reactor fuel. It could not be used in atomic bombs. But I worked on a few of those projects as a student. I enjoyed that work. I also enjoyed bicycling a little bit within the plant. They had bicycles in the plant. And I would frequently, rather than walk to the cafeteria, I'd ride the bike to the cafeteria. I never did like to walk. I always liked to ride the bike. So they had bicycles on the campus. And I worked at a laboratory, and I didn't work at other facilities, just worked in the laboratory. But I do remember bicycling to the cafeteria. What's going on? Oh, I'm pushing the wrong button.
What is Oak Ridge famous for?
They produced the uranium-235 for the bomb. Now, Mound did not prepare, oh, wait a minute, Oak Ridge, yeah, we're back to Oak Ridge. Today, they're into computers and a lot of different things. Maybe some of you might know what they're into. Maybe they're still into chemistry, I would think they are. But at that time, that was 1956 and 1957. I'm sure there were other things going on, but my job as a student, you know, I didn't have any high technology work to do, but I enjoyed my work down there. It was, I guess, I shouldn't say fun. Maybe it was fun. I enjoyed it. Anyway, I did enjoy bicycling, well, maybe not even half a mile, quarter of a mile to the cafeteria. Okay, in 1965, I went to the University of Illinois, a great school, right? Well, went to school there. In 1965, I went to University of Illinois to teach radiochemistry. Now, at Illinois, at any big campus, parking near the main buildings was hard to do. So I bought a bicycle for $49. So I bicycled to school. Excuse me, there was a parking lot right next to the chemistry building where I taught. And, Mom, do you remember Noise Lamb?
Yes.
You know, one of the main chemistry buildings at Illinois was Noise Lamb. Okay, I drink a lot, but this is water. I assure you, this is water. When I say I drink a lot, I'll have to take a break with water once in a while. Okay, I also bicycled with the kids in the neighborhood. Now, my son David, we'll talk about him later, was less than a year old. I took him for a ride on that back seat of the bicycle. As you can see, that was rather tiring for him. He laid his head on the head. Okay, that's him. I don't think he was a year old then. But here he is, 29 years later. We went to Winter Park and bicycled in the Rocky Mountains. He's on top of a rock in the Rocky Mountains. That's my son David. Okay, my first relation with Mound was a Thunder Road Bike-a-thon. I think that was maybe in the 70s somewhere. Different corporations in the Dayton area helped sponsor that event. It was an event where you raised money for the different charities around Dayton. Richard Fitchcraft was the manager at that time, and he asked me to sort of coordinate some of the activities. And I asked my daughter Joni, she's not here. And Kathy, did you ride in that bike-a-thon?
I don't remember.
Okay. My daughter Joni did, and she remembers. And I don't know if any other Mound people rode in that. Did you, Tom Kissner? Okay. Well, anyway, I helped coordinate that. The other patches or things are for other bike rides that I participated around Dayton. The Dayton Cycling Club sponsored different rides. One of them is the Huffman 100. I think anybody from Miami has heard of Huffman. Well, I don't want to spend much time on this. Okay, well, this is a big thing, I think, related to Mound. In the 1980s, I think it was the 1980s, 5 of us bicycled to Mound routinely. Now here we have a group picture. We all bicycled separately. I think some of you probably recognize Claude Hudgens. He bicycled. He lived in my neighborhood. He lived just a block or two away. But I didn't bicycle. None of these guys bicycled together. We all bicycled separately. I might mention a second fellow, Don Fleming. I didn't know him, but he bicycled from downtown Dayton. So he bicycled quite a distance. The next one is me, Carl Bishop. After that is Tom Kissner. Tom commuted from Centerville. And then the last one was Pete Jarbio. I didn't know him very well. Somebody said they knew Pete Jarbio. I didn't know him. Oh yeah, you knew Bert Jarbio, yeah. Well, I didn't know Pete, but he did bicycle Mound. He was one of the ones who bicycled. Now, Chuck Milkey, where is he? He was here before. Oh, there he is. Okay, I asked Jack Milkey for some pictures. I asked him for a picture of me because Bob Bowman asked me for a picture. Well, he got me pictures of all the bicycle commuters. Now, before I show you these pictures, these must have been pictures from badges, is that right?
Some of them are.
Yeah, oh, some of them, okay. Okay, before this group bicycled to Mound, there was this guy. I shouldn't have put his name up there. I didn't recognize that. That's Ken Phillips.
Yeah, I did.
He bicycled to Mound. He must have been one of the first ones. When he first started bicycling, he couldn't make it up the hill. He'd park his bottom at the bottom of the stairs and walk up. But later on, he got stronger and he biked up the hill too. All of us, of course, biked up the hill. That kept us awake in the morning to start our work after we biked up the hill. There's Claude Huggins. Well, that's Claude Huggins. I think none of you probably know Claude Huggins. Now here's Don Fleming. I didn't know him at all. But he was one of the bike riders. He's the one that bicycled from downtown Dayton, so he had quite a commute. There's Carl Bishop. Look at the black hair that I had. Look at my hair now. But at least I've got hair. A friend of mine, well, anyway, there's Tom Kissner. Tom and I were good friends. We played tennis together. And the next picture, I've got a picture of Tom Kissner here. He and I took bike rides. This, I think, is in South Lebanon. We bicycled up to the Air Force Museum, which was, I don't know, maybe 20 miles away. It was a long bike ride. And I remember on the way back, this was along the Little Miami Bikeway. And the bikeway, of course, it's along the river, so it slopes slightly down. But the day we were biking back, there was a wind in our back. And we made it up to 25 miles an hour. Now that was not our typical biking speed. Mine was probably about 12 miles an hour. But that was a great day. We didn't bike the whole route at 25 miles an hour, but we did for a while with the wind at our back. That was fun. Here's Pete Jarbio. I didn't know him. I'm not sure where he bicycled from. Don't know how many miles he bicycled from. What did we go? There he is. Oh, okay. Another thing I did at Mound, when I went on business trips, Mound, of course, paid for my transportation to the conference or the meeting, whatever it is. But I was allowed, or I took my bicycle along and bicycled before the meeting. That was a lot of fun. Let me show you the first place. I didn't take my bicycle, but I had a meeting in San Francisco. So I went out a day earlier and rented a bike and bicycled across the Golden Gate Bridge. That was sort of a thrill. As you know, that bridge is one of the most famous ones in the world, probably. It certainly is in the United States. Now, I did not bicycle on the road when they built this bridge. Okay, they put a sidewalk on the side. So pedestrians and bicyclists could ride and walk on that sideway. Now let's see, let me go back. Oh, no, it's not there. Oh, there it is, okay. It was built in 1937. Cost $35 million now. That's a lot of money back then. It was only 1.7 miles, so this was not a long ride. But it was enjoyable to bike on the Golden Gate Bridge. And I guess it's the San Francisco Bay that's below that. I don't know my geography that well. Okay, the second time I bicycled, Monsanto had a meeting, not Monsanto, but some organization had a meeting in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. The Grand Tetons were in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So I flew my bike out to Jackson Hole, and from the airport in Jackson, I bicycled to the Grand Tetons. There's a bikeway there, but I just bicycled around Grand Tetons. It was a nice place. Yellowstone is just north of Grand Tetons. I cheated. I took a bus up to Yellowstone, but I did bike around a little bit in the Grand Tetons. What am I doing wrong here? Oh, okay, I camped in the Grand Tetons. I borrowed this bike from a friend of mine, and that's myself at the campground, the Grand Tetons. Now, back then, that was around 1982, there was no charge for being in the national park. I think now they charge money at the Grand Tetons. So I bicycled free. I didn't have to, or I stayed free at the national park. I didn't have to pay a fee. Okay, I saw this device in the campground. I didn't know what it was. But I asked the park ranger, and he said, that's a bear trap. There's a bear trap in the campground. The idea is they put food in the back of the trap, and then, of course, the bear goes in, and then the front slides down. They capture the bear. And then, of course, they release the bear somewhere in the environment. The Grand Tetons National Park has a lot of acreage. Let's see, the third trip I flew out with Monsanto was at Johnson's State College in Vermont. Vermont's a nice place, so I bicycled from the airport up to the State College. Now, I flew out there with Vito Casello. Maybe some of you know Vito Casello. He worked in analytical with me. Now, out there we met a fellow locally who brought his bike to the meeting, and he brought his bicycle. At some of these meetings, you know, you're free in the afternoon. So one day, Vito Casello took myself and this gentleman, I don't remember his name, up to Stowe, Stowe, Vermont, and we bicycled down the hill. I like the challenge of bicycling up the hills, but it's nice to bike downhill once in a while. Okay, this was an interesting place I visited. This was the chemistry building at Virginia Tech. A bicycle from Roanoke, Virginia to Blacksburg and back. I was working for Dick Neff at the time, and he suggested on my expense report, I put down the expenses for riding my bike. I rode my bike from the airport to the campus. I was reimbursed 4 cents a mile. That was the standard rate for a bicycle commuting. And I was reimbursed at $2.80 for that ride to the campus and back. Now, I mentioned this, maybe I shouldn't mention it, but this did not happen when I was there. But in 2007, there was a fellow there, maybe I shouldn't have mentioned his name, but this was one of the biggest shootings in the United States. He killed 32 people, and he injured another 17. Like I say, this did not happen when I was there. This happened later. So I wanted to mention that. That was at Virginia Tech. Okay, another trip that I took was to Berkeley, California, again on business. But there I I flew my bicycle, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned, it cost $10 to take your bicycle on a plane. Monsanto did not pay for that. I paid for that. That was my expense. But when I took that trip, I bicycled, I called a 17-mile ride. It was for cars and bicycles or pedestrians, whatever. And I don't know the history of this tree, but it's called the Lone Cypress at Pebble Beach. I don't know the history of it, but it's been around for a long time as a unique tree. Pebble Beach, of course, they have a golf course there. I remember bicycling by the golf course. I don't golf, I didn't have my golf clubs with me. Oh, okay, I bicycled around a little bit, and I stayed at one motel, and then I stayed at a second motel. In Mound was the name of the city. And this motel where I stayed was sometimes referred to as the Mound Hilton, Hyton. It was a nice motel, but nothing fancy. I stayed there, and of course paid my own expenses to stay there. Now, when I was there, afterwards, I had to cross the mountains. I had to cross the Santa Cruz Mountains. That was a steep climb. I like the challenge of climbing up a mountain. I rode my bicycle up the top. This is at the top. I seen at the top, I guess from Ben Lomond is a small town. I'd never heard of it, so I took my bike right out there. Now, I had plenty of bike riding. Like I said, I bicycled for a couple of days, 2 or 3 days. Stayed at one motel and then a second, Ben Lomond Hilton is where I last stayed. So I was ready to go back to Berkeley for some Monsanto business. There was a conference out there. Now there's a Bay Area Rapid Transit out there. They call it BART, Bay Area Rapid Transport. It was out of Fremont, California. After I crossed the Santa Cruz Mountains, I ended up in Fremont, California. And that's when I took the train up to Berkeley. Now, you could take the train as long as you put your bike in the last car. That's what the rules were. Also, you couldn't do that during rush hour. So I had to do that off hours, which is fine. Okay, my wife one time had a conference, nursing conference in Chicago, and I took my bike along, and you probably recognize that back to Sears Tire. There was a bike path along Lake Michigan, and I don't remember how many miles, but while she was at the conference working, I bicycled along Lake Michigan. Okay, I did a lot of biking with my son David. We bicycled on the Skyline Drive, the Shenandoahs. We bicycled to the Adirondacks, and we bicycled to Ocean City in Maryland. When we first started bicycling, my son was only 13 years old, but he enjoyed bicycling. And we bicycled on, I guess, 3 different trips where we bike packed. There's our bikes loaded with our tent, sleeping bags, and other gear that we needed when you camped in the environment. But this was another climb. We started in the valley, Shenandoah Valley, and biked up to the Skyline Drive, it was called. Skyline Drive was at the top of the Shenandoah Mountains. The speed limit on the road, it was only a 2-lane road, if I remember right. So it wasn't difficult. We didn't have to worry about the traffic. The speed limit there was like 35 miles an hour. So it was not considered to be a dangerous ride. I remember, this is maybe a tangent, but there are a lot of deer in those parts. And just for kicks, when I saw a few deer, I started counting them, and I counted 29 deer when I was in that park in the Shenandoah Mountains. Wrong button again. Oh, this is our campsite. Dave and I camped near the Appalachian Trail. We got off the main road, Sideline Drive, and biked back, not very far, but we biked off the road at a site near the Appalachian Trail. We did not hike on the Mason, or we didn't ride our bikes on the Appalachian Trail either. That wouldn't be allowed. A second camping trip that Dave and I took was to the Adirondacks. In this case, my daughter Joni had a boyfriend in New Hampshire. So she took us to a location, Louis Lake, south of the Adirondacks. And David and I bicycled up to the Adirondacks. We bicycled to Lake Placid. Lake Placid was the site of the Winter Olympics in 1980. I just took a picture of the ski jumps. David and I did not ride our bicycles. Ski jumps. They were rather steep. We just looked at them and took a picture. I remember when we were there, we saw some campers down in the valley. Now I have no idea if, who was it? I think John Burton had a camper. No, I'm not saying he was there, but I remember seeing the campers at Lake Placid. Okay, we bicycled to the airport in New Hampshire, and we picked up the car then, so we could drive back to Dayton, which we did. But on the way back to Dayton, we stopped at Cooperstown, at the Baseball Hall of Fame. We stopped at Niagara Falls, and I like to tell this story. We bicycled from one country to the other. We bicycled from the United States to Canada. Very impressive. That was only a couple miles, I guess. There was no problem back then. You didn't need a passport or anything like that. In fact, when you went into Canada, the border guards did not check with you. But on the way back, the border guard, wait a minute, where am I? Oh, okay, I didn't finish this slide. The border guards asked for identification. Well, I was an adult, I had a driver's license. My son was only 15 or 16. He didn't have any identification. So the border guard questioned us, but he knew he was a kid. I told him this was my son, and he let us through. I didn't think they would keep my son in Canada. So that was an interesting experience I had at Niagara Falls. There we go again. Okay, the next trip we took camping was down to Ocean City, Maryland. On the way down, we camped at Delaware Seashore State Park. And again, we're camping, that's our tent. And this kid, his name was Sean was sort of fascinated by what we were doing. We were riding a bike and we were camping. So I took a picture of him. Now at Ocean City, Maryland, when we got to Ocean City, there was a beach there. And I said, fun at Ocean City, Maryland. These are all the things you couldn't do. One of them is play ball. He couldn't bring drinks with bottles, and I can't read the other ones. There's a lot of things you couldn't do. So I labeled this slide as fun at Ocean City, Maryland, at Ocean City, Maryland Beach. I'm sure my son and I went down to the beach and spent a little time on the beach. Again, we camped in Ocean City. After Ocean City, we biked down to Virginia, to the Assateague Island National Seashore. Well, the National Seashore was inhabited by ponies or horses. I don't know what these were. They had free run of the island. We camped there. We didn't bother the horses and they didn't bother us. So we camped there. just one night, I guess. Okay, we camped, like you say, 3 times. But after that, we decided to just drive a car, take a plane. So I toured with David. We bicycled along the Pacific Ocean in California. That was separate from my trip when I went to Berkeley. He and I bicycled along the Pacific Ocean. I've got a story about that. He and I were bicycling up a hill out there. And along came a father and daughter. They were behind us. And my son, I was ahead of my son on the bike. And he promptly biked to get ahead of me. He didn't want to be embarrassed by this girl. They were both in college at this time. He was at UC. I don't know where the girl was from. We did talk to him later at the top of the hill. Okay, this is the route that we took. We did not go from San Francisco to Los Angeles, but I just wanted to give you an idea. We bicycled from Monterey down to San Luis Obispo. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right or not. I forget how many miles that was, but we did have to stop at a motel on the way down to that city. We bicycled along Route 1 in California. Now, you may think that bicycling on a highway like that was dangerous, but they had a berm on the side of the road. And I was experiencing bicycling. I bicycled in a safe manner, and so did my son. Along that route, we saw this bridge, the Bixby Creek Bridge. I don't know if that's as well known, but that's a nice bridge too in California. We bicycled across that bridge. One of the things on that route was the William Randolph Hearst Castle. I never heard of William Randolph, but I think most of you probably remember Patty Hearst.
But he was a publisher.
Pardon?
He was a publisher.
Okay, I didn't know. He was rich. He had his own castle along the Pacific Ocean. He had a nice swimming pool. We did tour the castle. We didn't swim. But it was nice to stop and see that castle. I thought there was one other picture. Oh, well, this is just a few pictures along the route near the Pacific Ocean. Another ride that we took, this is from the 1930s, I guess, or maybe even before that. Many railroads were converted to trails. There's no relation called railroad trails. So this this railroad line was eventually made into a trail. Like I said, this picture was taken in the, I don't know when it was taken. You can see it's an old picture. Transportation, there was a horse. This trail was called the Virginia Creeper Trail. And I always thought that referred to this train creeping up the hill. But is anyone familiar with the Virginia Creeper? The Virginia Creeper was the name of a plant. So they called it the Virginia Creeper plant. I didn't know that at the time. I just thought it was because the train had to creep up the hill. On the way back from that Virginia Creeper Trail, bike trails frequently go through private property, not over on public property. So in this case, we came across these cows, or maybe they were bulls, but in any event, we didn't take any chances. That's my son. I took his picture. He's bicycling around these bulls or cows, whatever they are. Oh, on a trail along the Greenbrier River, I met a fellow from Hamilton, Ohio. Now, I was living in Coleraine Township. Yeah, Coleraine Township. But I was teaching at Miami University, Hamilton, part-time. Anyway, he was a long-time resident of Hamilton, and he told me the campus was built on a dump. No, I didn't know that. Miami University, Hamilton was established in 1967. But I guess before that, there was a dump there, and naturally they teared the dump off and built Miami University at Hamilton. Okay, another trip we took, we flew out to Denver, I guess, and a friend of mine lived in that area, and he took our bicycles up to, what the heck is the name of the city? Winter Park. Now, the nice thing about that is they had a chairlift take you up the mountain so you could ski down the mountain. Well, this was summertime. But it was nice to take the ride up. We took our bikes up. They had made arrangements so you could put the bikes on the front of the chairlift. Okay, there are the trails. You did not take the trails the skiers took, but you had a winding trail like this that you took down the mountain. Okay, in late 1989, I always liked teaching, so I signed up to teach a class for the League of the American Wheelmen. I taught at the Kettering Adult School. They have different classes for adults, and I taught a class, not a course, on bicycling. And this was 1989, and I remember one of the students in my class was a police officer. Now, in 1989, I don't think there were policemen on bicycles. That has become quite prevalent since then. I think this student was trying to get the hang of bicycling safely and a little bit about bicycling mechanics. And that's what I was teaching in this class. Kettering Adult School, I taught there for, I guess, a couple times I taught the class there. Okay, one of the classes I taught was at Miami University, Hamilton. It was called Bicycling for Fun and Fitness. You know, it wasn't serious, we just bicycled for fun, and we kept fit. We bicycled on, well, for a while in the bicycle class, we bicycled in Hamilton, get used to city traffic. There's a bikeway that goes through Hamilton. That's the same bikeway that comes up here to Miamisburg. Okay, at the end of the class, let me mention the names. I'm there on the far left, and right next to me is Jane Hayden, I think. I'm not sure of the last name. In the middle there is Joelle. Joelle and I wouldn't say we were slow riders, but the other gentleman, or Jane and Doug Shepard was the guy, the tall fella with the yellow jacket. The other was Tom. No, they were fast riders. Again, Joe and I were not slow riders, you know. When these three fellows got to a location, they would stop and wait for us. You know, they wouldn't bicycle away from us. Now, what happened at the end of the class that I took, or that I taught, Doug Shepard, the guy in the middle, said, "Are you going to take us over to the Little Miami Bikeway?" I said, "Sure. I love biking. I'll take you over there. We'll bike over there for a while." And I said, on one condition. We stop for lunch when we take the bike ride and then ride back. And we did this for 3 years, bicycle with a group. So this was very enjoyable. I enjoyed the company of these individuals for 3 years. You know, we didn't bicycle every week. We bicycled maybe a couple times a month. And we always stopped at a restaurant halfway. We stopped at Ron's in Miamisburg. We stopped at a restaurant at the Air Force Museum. We stopped in Waynesville. Is anyone familiar with the Village restaurant in Waynesville? Yeah. It's a popular restaurant in Waynesville. We stopped at, what's that name of that restaurant in Newport. Do you remember, Kathy? There's a rest.
15 minutes.
Okay, thanks. There's a famous restaurant in Newport, Kentucky. Maybe I'll think of it later. Well, we bicycled across the Ohio River from Cincinnati over to Covington. We bicycled to see a cathedral. This picture was taken inside that cathedral, St. Mary's Cathedral. It's a well-known cathedral. My son David, he was living in Huntington, West Virginia, but he still sponsored or arranged for bicycle trips. We bicycled from Xenia up to Springfield, Ohio. We stayed overnight in Springfield and then biked back. As you can see, it was my family. I don't know, were you along with that bike?
Yeah.
Okay. I think, well, my daughter Kathy, my other daughter Jody, and of course David was the one who organized it all. We stopped at a hotel in Springfield, Ohio. We did that, did that for a couple of years. The bikeway along the Little Miami River was a train track. It was a rail line. Again, it was converted to rail to trails. This is the station there. The bikeway runs along the Little Miami River. Excuse me. They converted the train station there into a stop for bicyclists. You can stop at restrooms and water and so on. Now, from that particular location, you can bicycle to Yellow Springs, Columbus, Jamestown, Cincinnati, or Dayton. So that's more or less a hub. You can start there and bicycle to a number of different places. Usually, of course, I would bicycle there from Cincinnati. One time I did bicycle over to Dayton. We went to the, what's the name of the place in south of Dayton? That's where the Monsanto now has their their exhibit. Carolyn Park. Yeah, Carolyn Park. We stopped at Carolyn Park. We were there with my son David and enjoyed that ride. There's a connector between the Great Miami River Bikeway and the Little Miami Bikeway. Okay, on the way to Springfield, we stopped in Yellow Springs. And maybe you recognize the gentleman on the left of me. And that's not real, it's just a statue. This was when Obama was running for president. So Yellow Springs must have been Democratic. They have a statue of Obama. Not a statue, but a cardboard statue of President Obama. There's a nice dairy on the way to Springfield. We stopped there. And I'd like to show this slide. Bicycles were not invented till the late 1800s. But bicycle construction began in the early 1800s. Now, they were not constructing a bicycle trail, they were constructing a railroad. But a lot of railroads have been converted into bicycle trails, hiking trails. I think my next slide indicates, oh, wait a minute, let's just skip the slide. No, never mind, that comes later. Oh, okay, Mary and I, my wife, camped up north. We bicycled in Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, maybe Pennsylvania, and New York. We bicycled on bicycle trails. One of the first bicycle trails was called the Elroy Sparta Trail. These are two towns in Wisconsin. They built a bikeway from an old rail line between those two cities. This was called the Elroy Sparta Trail. Now, since then, that was the first bike trail in the United States. That was in Wisconsin. Since then, Over 2,100 bike trails have been constructed in the United States. It became very popular. It covered over 23,000 miles. It was on, of course, used train tracks. The trains were eliminated, a lot of them were eliminated. So as a result, somebody came up with the idea of converting these old rail lines to trails. And the Rails to Trails organization, now it wasn't an organization, but many of the states had Rails to Trails. Like I say, they came up with 2,100 of them. So if you want a bicycle, you have a bicycle in every state. Now some of the trails are short. Well, now the one in Ohio, along the Little Miami River, goes from Cincinnati to Lake Erie. They frequently call it the Ohio to Erie Trail. That may not be complete yet, but it's mostly complete. It's probably 95% complete. One of the nice rides that my wife and I took was along the Missouri River. This was on a trail called the Katy Trail. I think it was a very long trail. My wife did not bicycle the whole trail. I think it was like 240 miles long. We were bicycling from St. Louis to Branson, Missouri, for some entertainment. Now it's interesting, along this bike trail, the people in that area were opposed to bike trails. A lot of places in the city, they have this riffraff, I guess, on the trails. So we stopped at a restaurant, and we were running out of water, so we asked for water. They wouldn't give us any money because they were opposed to bike trails. However, later on, well, okay, I don't have a slide of that. My wife got a flat tire. I had a spare too, but it was rotted, I guess. But there was a guy on the bike trail who sort of looked after bicycles. And he took us across the river to a bike shop. We got our bike fixed and came back on the bike trail. So we had two experiences. People didn't like bikes, but we had this guy that was very helpful. Without him, I don't know, we'd have been in trouble because the spare tube I had wasn't very good. It was flat. We bicycled up to Minnesota at Itasca State Park. And here's a picture of my wife, Mary, walking across the Mississippi River. This is the origin of the Mississippi River.
Say again what they had against bicyclists.
Pardon?
What was their problem with bicyclists?
Well, a lot of places like that. I understand there's Cincinnati. The people in Terrace Park, I think it was, didn't like the bicyclists. I don't know, the bicyclists ran between their properties or something like that. And they didn't like that idea. Now, eventually in Terrace Park, I think UC did a survey of the properties in there increased in value, not drastically, because of the bike paths. Because the bike paths being close to your home was nice to have. A lot of people are bicycling now. Okay, on the way to Branson, Missouri, I didn't meet Harry Truman, but this is a Harry Truman impersonator. This was at the Truman Library on the way to Branson, Missouri. Okay, the tradition of bicycling continues. This is my son David with his daughter Leela. They took up bicycling. Okay, here's Kathy. She's in the audience. On the right is Kathy training for a bicycle ride across the country. She bicycled from San Diego to San Antonio, or no, San Augustine, Florida, I think. That was quite a ride. I did not ride with her. That was amazing, and she did that. The tradition was you dipped your wheel in the Pacific Ocean, and then when you got to Florida, you dipped your wheel in the Atlantic Ocean. That's just a tradition that was carried out. But she started early. She started, I think she was about a year and a half here. Started riding a tricycle. That's my daughter Joni. Well, all my kids bicycled a little bit. She didn't bicycle across the country. She bicycled around town with her three daughters. Those were her three daughters. Okay, I think that covers everything. Does anyone have any questions? Any other questions?
When did you get into the multi-speed bikes? Raleigh had a
Oh,
sturdy
yeah.
yard. Yeah.
Before I came to Mound, I had a 10-speed bike. In Illinois, I did not. Illinois is flat. So I just had a one-speed bike. I had a swim. That picture with my son in the back was just a swim. Sometime before I started bicycling at Monsanto, excuse me, I got a 10-speed bike when I started bicycling to Monsanto. It was nice having that 10-speed bike. Excuse me, the bicycle up this hill at Mound.
Did you ever consider building your own bikes?
No, didn't go that far. I might mention, I biked a lot, so at the end of my bicycling career, I bought a titanium bike. Those were expensive, but it was nice. It only weighed 21 pounds. I like the bike. And I kid say, when I die, I'm going to get a casket big enough. So I'm hoping to take it and have it. Bicycle and have it. That's a joke I like to tell.
Did you ever
Yes.
have fun?
I've learned three things riding the bike. I like to ride the bike. Thing one that I learned, and it still defies me, is it's uphill both ways.
What do you mean by that?
You ride the bike and you're going uphill. You
Right.
turn around, you come back, and it's uphill.
Oh,
Okay?
uphill back?
Yeah.
Thing
Uphill
two
both ways.
Where was
is-
this you were biking?
Thing two is the wind's always in your face.
Yeah.
Although when you went over 20 miles an hour, that wasn't the case.
Well, as I said, Tom and I rode up to the Air Force Museum
Yeah.
along the Little Miami Bikeway, and we had the wind at our back. That was great. I think he remembers that too.
And
25
thing-
miles an hour.
Thing three, it's fun to ride with somebody else.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Now, there were a lot of times I bicycled by myself. When I was in my 70s, I would drive over to Waynesville at Warren Sheehan. I stayed at Warren Sheehan's house. I parked my car there. And I'd bicycle by myself up the bikeway. One time I stayed in Xenia overnight. But I like to bicycle the number of miles corresponding to my age. When I was 75 years old, I bicycled 75 miles. I did that for a number of years.
But you never experienced being uphill both ways? You go out and
Just seems
you
like
know
it.
it's gonna be easier coming back.
Well, yeah. I
You're going
mentioned-
halfway, and it's just as hard coming back as it was going.
Well, that's true, but it's a lot easier to come back. And then, like I say, when we were out in Colorado, we took the ski lift up, but we bicycled down the mountain. And there are other places where I bicycled downhill. But I did like the challenge of bicycling up the hill. Bicycling from the bottom of the mound up to SMPP over to the tennis barn was a challenge. That was hard to do. I didn't do that very often. I might mention too, another side point on that. When I bicycled back from the tennis barn, I had the bicycle on Route 741. Now, a lot of people wouldn't do that. I didn't feel it was dangerous. I knew the rules of bicycling.
No way.
A police officer stopped me, said, "You can't bicycle on this highway." Well, a bicycle is a vehicle. You can't.
Did you ever
Now,
have a folding bike?
I had what?
Folding,
No, I had a regular bicycle. He did not give me a ticket. He warned me. Well, he must have looked into it, and he actually came to my house and apologized.
Oh.
Because he didn't realize that a bicycle could ride on the road. But I thought it was nice of him to come to my house and apologize. Like I say, he didn't give me a ticket, gave me a warning. No, I didn't bicycle on Route 741 very often, just coming back from the tennis barn. To get to my house in West Carrollton, I bike down that road. Now it's a 4-lane road, if I remember right. So I kept in the right-hand lane.
Carl, did you ever estimate how many miles total you think you biked?
No, I did one time. My brother-in-law said I'd probably bicycle around the world, but I never did add up the miles.
Okay.
I've had a bicycle a number of miles. One thing I forgot to mention, when I bicycled around Mound here, that before there was a bikeway, I biked up the highway there. I don't know if that was Highway 25.
Yeah, it's still, oh, yeah.
And at one place near I got to West Carrollton, there was a curb. And that's the only time I was hit by a car, but only the mirror hit me. It did not mark me off, knock me off.
Doesn't take much.
No, but I was knocked down. I was not knocked down, so it was okay. But that taught me a lesson. It taught me that I need to ride in the middle of that right lane. If I ride on the side and there's a curb there, it would be bad. And that's what I was doing. I was riding too close to that curb. And the car had the right of way. But after that, on a 2-lane road, 2 lanes going both ways. I'd ride in that middle lane on the right. And you can do that, you got a vehicle, that's proper. Now, my daughter biked out west. And on occasion, you could ride on the expressway, but on an interstate. Now, imagine you rode on the shoulder, didn't you?
What's that?
You rode on the shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When there's
That's
no-
Go ahead.
So say when there's no way to get from point A to point B, it's legal to ride on the interstate. So we were in such desolate conditions that it was the only way to get from one point to another. Yeah. Not something I want to do often.
We have a lot of signs that say no bicycles.
No. No,
Well,
not
maybe
a lot of
so.
signs.
Maybe not out west, like, yeah.
No,
Like around here, you wouldn't do that. It'd be illegal.
it'd be
right?
illegal here, right?
And nobody would want to do it.
Right.
Nobody would ride on I-75 or I-70. But because, like Andy said, to get from point A to point B, there may have not been some decent roads. So you'd ride on the expressway. Again, on the side. You didn't ride, yes.
Carl, did you have any incidents with angry dogs or coming to
A little
bite your
bit,
heels?
not a lot. Mostly towards the end, the dogs were behind electric fences. I didn't have any serious problem with that. Sometimes the dogs would chase after me, but I'd bicycle a little faster. I had a brother who carried halt with him. He sprayed the dogs with a halt to keep them away, and that worked. I may have carried halt with me, but I don't remember ever having to spray it at the dog. Yeah, I never had a big problem with dogs. It is a problem when you're on a bike, I guess. But I never had a major problem. Any other questions? Okay, I hope you all ride a bicycle.
Thanks a lot, Carl.